In this demo, we'll introduce the Scrapy Shell. The Scrapy Shell is a very useful interactive environment that allows you to quickly prototype what information you want to extract. We'll work with this very simple quotations page, quotes.toscrape.com page 1. On your terminal window, you'll specify Scrapy Shell as your command and the URL of the page that you want to scrape. The Scrapy Shell is very lightweight because you don't have to actually instantiate a spider or set up any Python class to start scraping. When you launch the Scrapy shell, you'll see a bunch of available objects in the shell. Scrapy objects are just components. We'll use these components when we are working with Scrapy to parse responses, to extract information, and so on. Within our shell, Scrapy is the top level module which contains all the Scrapy objects within it. You can also access the crawler object here directly. This is the entry point into the Scrapy API. This is what you'll use to access the execution engine and other basic information about Scrapy. We'll work with Scrapy items in more detail later on in this module. These are containers that are used to store the scraped information in a structured format, in a Python dictionary format. From within the Scrapy shell, you can also access the request and response objects. These can be thought of as wrappers around the HTTP objects which made the request to the URL and the response which contains the response that was received from the URL. Our request to download the contents of the URL resulted in a 200 OK response. The response object also holds the URL that we fetched. The settings object will give you all the default settings that Scrapy is configured with. You can see a huge list of settings here. We can access one setting specifically as well. The default Scrapy bot is used to scrape our website. The Scrapy shell contains a default spider object. We'll work with spiders a lot more in this module. A spider basically contains the definition of how you want a particular site scraped. The default spider within the Scrapy shell is something that you can quickly use for prototyping. We've instantiated this Scrapy shell by downloading the contents of the quotes website. You can fetch the contents of another URL from within the shell by using the fetch command. The fetch command updates all of the objects within the Scrapy shell. All Scrapy objects now have the contents of this new web page that we've scraped, un.org. The Scrapy shell is built on top of the Python shell, which means you can import other Python libraries and use them here, such as the pretty print library to view the response from the UN website. The headers for any response are also available on the response object. We've used the view command before using the terminal window. This will open up the page in a browser and this will render the page the way Scrapy views it. The URL contents are first downloaded to a file on the local machine before we can view it. A return value of true indicates that the download was successful. Scrapy automatically opens up my browser window and points to the file on the local machine. I'm going to copy this file location onto my clipboard and use it later. Back to the Scrapy shell, the shelp function will give you access to all the Scrapy objects and commands that are available from the shell. Let's exit from the Scrapy shell here and get back to our terminal window. Scrapy can also be used to parse the contents of a downloaded file, like the file that we had copied to our clipboard before. This will open up the Scrapy shell as you might expect, where the request was made to a file on our local machine. You can work with the Scrapy shell just like you did with a downloaded URL.